Lyn, John mentioned, was on Natalie Brunell's show, our friend Natalie Brunell, and lots of great stuff there. Watch the episode. It's an hour long. We pulled out toward the end Lyn's price prediction.
If I imagine a scenario that brings us to very high prices this calendar year, it would probably be because some massive liquidity unlock happened. Let's say the US bond market broke, the Fed came in and like basically did yield curve control or QE that they don't really want to be doing, or some sort of big treasury operation twist sort of thing. It would probably take something like that combined with some sort of de-escalation of tariffs. So I never really rule out what Bitcoin's doing. I look at a couple of things. One is I think liquidity is probably going to be somewhat favorable for the rest of the year. And two, if you look at certain valuation metrics, I like to look at the market cap to realized cap ratio, which is market capitalization compared to the average on-chain cost basis. And this current consolidation has taken off a lot of the hype around it. So if you look at the prior consolidation, so Bitcoin reached 73,000 in March 2024, that ratio got a little bit elevated. So it wasn't elevated to the point of like prior like multi-year tops, but it was a little bit heated. And so after about a 7-month consolidation, it pretty much worked off all of that excessive valuation, that excessive hype that allowed the market to consolidate. Then when it jumped to 108K, it reached similar frothy levels. And so the fact that we've been consolidating for several months, not particularly surprising. I think we worked off a lot of that valuation already. So I think we're at a pretty strong foundation to at least start building from, especially once we get past maybe near-term stock market shocks and things like that.
Again, shout out to Natalie and her show, Coin Stories. You should check out that interview with Lyn, and she has lots of great minds all the time. Excellent interviewer. So highly recommend Coin Stories. What do you guys make of Lyn's take there?
I liked it. I think that whole episode is worth listening to. I shouted it out at the beginning, but I'll say it again. Really good job. Natalie asked, I think, all the right questions. Lyn gave a master class on like high level macro stuff. And then that question about Bitcoin was at the end of the conversation. And yeah, I would agree with what Lyn said, but I would just add one other wild card, if you would call it that. Bitcoin has this chance that the US government buys a good amount. You cannot forget this, right? They have said and put it in writing, the Treasury Secretary and the Commerce Secretary, Besson and Lutnick, shall find something like that. Budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. Bo Hines has been out publicly multiple times now saying he wants the US to buy as much as they can. There are different proposals saying, hey, US government, here's how you can do some budget neutral purchases of Bitcoin. So I agree with Lyn's point that there could be some sort of liquidity unlock that causes Bitcoin to rise with liquidity. We know Bitcoin's very correlated with global liquidity, 100% correct. I would just add to it that there's this other potential that the US government at some point says, hey, by the way, we found a way to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has that card that can be played. NVIDIA stock does not have that card.
The government's not going to buy a bunch of NVIDIA stock?
I'm not betting on it.
It's not Japan.
I'm dumping my bags.
Trump just said yesterday he is good friends with Jensen, and Jensen's going to be just fine. He said he's going to be just fine. So who knows what they're going to do? They blocked him off $5.5 billion from China. Maybe they're gonna buy some stock. Or I honestly think they should buy all the chips that they can't sell to China. I honestly think that's the next move. Sorry, I'm going to answer the question. This is a side thing. But so this week, Trump blocks NVIDIA from exporting any of these chips to China, like $5.5 billion of chips. And this is a huge piece of leverage because of how fast AI is going right now. You need these chips. And my thing is the government should just make up the purchase, just literally buy all the chips, give them to American companies. Like, you want this competition, like, support the AI race. If you're going to play this like top-down game of controlling trade, like, at least do it in your favor. You can say free markets and you can say, let's just have free and open markets. But if you're not going to have those and you're going to play this game, you might as well play it well. So anyways, tangent. But I agree with Lyn. I think there's a lot of, one thing I actually took away that I think she didn't stay with on that point, but it was the most important comment to me. She said, liquidity is going to be pretty supportive for the rest of the year. And that's what I think people are missing is that, yeah, we're in this trade war and yeah, there's all these tensions and difficulties and what have you. But liquidity is going to have to come this year. And so that will be supportive. I'm also still, I think they do end up resolving this thing. I think in 2 months, we're not still in these conditions. But I think between liquidity environments changing, and I do think you see big buyers. I think you see a lot more corporate buyers. I think these MicroStrategy-esque plays are hot, they're big, they're continuing, there's going to be more. And I think you see U.S. government activity. I agree with John. They've been very transparent, and I think it could be at a big scale. I'm very bullish, and I was on Twitter. I shouted out this Sunday's future open, which was even below the low. I called that as the bottom publicly and said everyone was very panicked there. And I still think that's true. The bottom, in my opinion, has been in. And we're not going below there. So I think there's still a lot of fear in markets, but I think we're in the year substantially higher.
All right. Should we jump into bit bonds, guys, or anything else on markets?
Just one more comment for me, because it's related to everything we're talking about here. There's a very good comment in the chat. It asks us what we make of a statement that G20 countries are selling treasuries as a tariff defense negotiating tactic, and is this going to cause the Fed to step in? And then they posed the question. The question is, how much will the Fed be willing to buy? I think this actually aligns with what Lyn was saying, is that there might be some event that causes a liquidity unlock. And I would compare it to a March 2023 event when the US was literally entering a banking crisis. We had the biggest bank failure since 2008 because rates rose so much and the banks were caught offsides in this unrealized loss position. Then you had a bank run that needed the BTFP program. The Fed and the Treasury and the FDIC came up with a new program on a Sunday, emergency, caused the Fed's balance sheet to increase. I think that those are the types of interventions. If we see an intervention, that's what it'll be by the Fed this year. It's not going to be blow the doors open, QE, COVID style. It takes something really crazy to justify that happening. But I would just point out that if you look at a chart of the S&P 500 since March of 2023, it's like there's a couple downs, but it's like almost a one-way path up from there. So sometimes you just need the Fed to plug this hole of something that would have been a crisis, and then the liquidity starts flowing for a variety of different reasons. But that's the kind of thing I would be on the lookout for. So I just wanted to hit on that question that one of our astute listeners posed.